Thank you very much, Teresa.
Thank you.
Yeah, our next speaker is Paul White. Paul is from the he's also from the Department of Agriculture here in Ireland. Paul's going to talk to us today about the association between badgers and the risk of disease in cattle in a particular area of Ireland called County Monaghan, which is basically north of Dublin.
Okay, no, that'll do for the questions. Paul is very nervous, as you would be if you were about to have me presenting your work. But anyway, I'll do my best and he'll deal with any of the questions. So what Paul worked on was the temporal association between badger presence and heart TB risk in a county of Ireland, Monaghan. We can skip this slide because Margaret has dealt with it, but basically the key bullet point is the one at the end. The TB in badgers is endemic here, so it's part of the problem we have to ultimately solve. What Paul's study set out to do was to quantify the temporal trends in TB risk in areas of ongoing badger removal. So there's two areas before dealing with the results. I'll give you a bit of background on how Paul set up his analysis before and after culling badgers, and then we also have to give a little bit of explanation to how he selected his qualifying herds, because he only chose herds who had 33% of their land within 500 metres of a set in a capture zone, and all this related to County Monaghan in the years 2004-2011. So to focus firstly on how he set up his modelling, he looked at the TB herd hazard in a period before a badger was captured, and then in a period after the badger was captured, which he measured up until the next TB herd test. So the red line there represents the badger being caught at time 0, and he looked at a time prior to that and then a time after that. So the before model, the assumption was made that the badger that was captured was there at least 6 months. We obviously don't know how long it was there, but given that our capturing program is an annual one, it's not unreasonable to assume that the badger was there between 1 day ago and 365 days ago, hence the 6 months assumption. And then in the after model period, Paul modelled a period of 14 months. I have an asterisk after there. So if you just think of 2 months lag plus 12 months, it'll become clear as we go on. In the after period, the time varies from 0 to 12 months because we have an annual testing program in our cattle in Ireland. So the after period could be 1 month in one herd and it could be 12 in another. So it's a varying period. The basic hypothesis was that from our experience in Ireland, when we remove a badger, it's at a time of high risk in cattle herds in that locality because that's why we're removing the badger. And then following that then we get a reduction in the herd hazard. The gentleman earlier asked a question about perturbation effect because in the UK researchers would argue that removing a badger leads to social disturbance, which leads to negative impacts on cattle and badger TB. While our removal program certainly causes social disruption, we haven't been able to measure any of those negative effects that are postulated in the UK. There's an area then here that we'll dwell on a little as well. Obviously, if a badger is removed today, we wouldn't expect to be able to measure an effect tomorrow because you're depending on measuring effect and testing herds. So what Paul did is he tested time lags. He tested a time lag of 0, 1 month, 2 months and 3 months. And then comparing those time lags using AIC modelling, obviously the lowest AIC figure is the best fit model, and that turned out, as you can see, at 2 months. So our final hypothesis is that there's a high TB hazard when a badger is removed, and for the 6 months prior to that high risk is maintained for this 2 month lag phase, and then as you measure from out to the next herd test for herds in those areas, that the risk will fall. So then to give a little bit of time talking about how Paul picked his herds. He didn't use every herd, he just used herds that had at least 33% of their land within 500 metres of a set in the wildlife programme in County Monaghan during the years 2004-2011. So then, for people not au fait with this country, Monaghan is the county in yellow. It's in the northern part of our country. We've created a window here in Monaghan, and when you look into that, this is an actual reactor herd. So, and this is the reactor herd buffered out to 2 kilometres around it. So we have a lot of fragmented land in our farms are fragmented by nature. So this is typical of our farmlands rather than being untypical. So when we have a herd breakdown, as Margaret described earlier, large breakdowns, 3 or more standard reactors are investigated by a state veterinarian. Then if a purchase source, a bought-in animal, if that is eliminated as being involved in the breakdown, and if badgers are in the locality, we set up a set survey and a follow-on capturing programme is put in place in relation to the breakdown herd. The green dots that you see here are the actual sets that were identified as part of the survey that related to the reactor herd in the photograph. So then what Paul did is he took each of these sets that was added to the capturing programme and buffered out from those 500 metres. And then within that 500 metres selected any herd that had 33% of its land or more within that 500 metres. So as you can see, when he was finished with that process, he had quite a lot of the land within 2 kilometres of the breakdown herd. So what this left Paul with then, in the years 2004 to 2011, there was 135 qualifying breakdowns that were investigated and resulted in a capturing programme being set up around them. The capturing programme reached, it was based on 1,002 sets that were part of the capturing programme and they were captured annually. At 359 of the sets, there was at least 1 badger captured, and over the period, there was 1,123 badgers removed. So out of the total herds in Monaghan, 3,500, the subset of study herds that got into Paul's study was 1,442. So then just to re-emphasise again, these were the herds in Monaghan that had between 33 and 100% of their land within 500 metres of sets in the capturing area, because they are really the only herds that matter. The 2,000 herds who are not associated with the capture area, you couldn't attribute anything left, right, or whatever in relation to benefits or not from a badger being removed. So this then gives you a picture of where Paul's 1,400 herds were within the blue lines. The statistical analysis used was a straightforward Cox regression, and if anybody is deep into log survival plots and Schoenfield residuals, they can talk about it with Paul later. So then the results. So before the badger was captured, these are Paul's results. For people not used to looking at these type of tables, I'll try and direct you through it. So the 1.82. So what that's saying is in the period, the 6-month period prior to the badger being captured, the herd hazard for herds associated with that area, that set, was 82% higher than at other times. Underneath that, then there's another figure, 1.41. So that says there was a 41% higher risk based on herd size. So as a herd increases in a log increase, so as you go from 10 to 27, or if you go from 100 to 270, you get an increase in the risk of a TB breakdown. Prior history of TB also matters. Herds that had one prior TB breakdown since 2002, they were at an increased risk of 42%. Herds with 2 or more, it was more than double. The one episode is a non-significant. It's not a significant figure, but the 2 or more is. A dairy herd has 70% higher risk than non-dairy herds. Then in the 12 months after removal, which is say you're allowing for the 2-month lag phase after the badger was caught, and then the following 12 months after that to the first test in each of the herds. Again, you had a high risk starting out. double the risk compared to other times. And then probably the most important figure for me anyway, and maybe the gentleman who asked about perturbation, the 0.83, that says for each month after the from the first month to the 12th month, the hazard of TB falls by 17% in our data set. Again, there's the 43% increase based on herd size. So basically, as herds get bigger, the risk of they failing a TB test increases. Again, the previous episodes are important. If you've had one previous episode, you have a 44% higher risk. If you've two or more, it's doubled. And then again, the enterprise type. If you're dairying, you're at higher risk than any other farm enterprise. To summarise the results then in a picture, Paul's data basically substantiated the contention of my department that when we're capturing badgers, it's because there's a problem in the area. That's why we're doing what we're doing, and because there are some in the conservation lobby don't actually believe that our program is targeted when we actually say it is. But this is hopefully further reassurance for them that it is. And then once we start capturing, then the risk declines at a rate of 17% per month out to 14 months. That's 12 months forward from the 2-month lag. Paul just followed it for 12 months because we have an annual testing program here. So once you go past 12 months, you basically have no more herds to work with. They're going on to a second test. The conclusions then just put down more formally that there they are again. Prior to the in the period prior to the badger being caught, the hazard was increased by 82% with the confidence intervals set out there. And then following the badger being caught and allowing for the 2-month lag, the post removal hazard decreased by 17% a month. And then to restate yet again, the study population isn't all the herds in Monaghan, just the subset within the targeted area of the county, which was 41% of the herds, and it was the herds that had 33% of their land within 500 metres of the set under capture. Thank you for your attention, and Paul would like to acknowledge his supervisors, Marta Young, Clas Franken in Wageningen, his co-authors, and most especially his colleagues in Monaghan who do all the work.
Thanks very much, and I'd just like to acknowledge the help of James O'Keefe there with the presentation with Paul. Are there any questions for James and Paul? No? Yeah, two questions here, one at the back.
Wonderful talk. When you, Joe Brownlee, UK, when you say you eliminated badgers, did you eliminate all the badgers from a set? What record did you have of how complete your eradication was at the local level?
No, we don't. I'll answer this one because it's more general. Our badger program, on a good day, we expect when we set out to capture badgers that we remove a half of them, and then on a bad day, we only remove 20%. So on average, we assume that any capturing effort we put in is no better than a half. So whatever we're removing, we're leaving that many back. We're focusing on creating a lower population density than what was there initially over a number of capturing attempts.
Okay, and that was your question. Okay, very good. Lady over here.
Liz Wilson, Northern Ireland. Did you monitor the area outside the trial area, and was there any change in trend in the TB levels there from what they'd been previously?
We saw that the county overall had an improved situation which mirrored the national situation. So because our subset of herds were those that were most closely associated with the sets and that were under capture, we feel that those herds had the most to tell us, and so that it was a national program, so undoubtedly there were effects outside of the areas. So So it's can be considered that badger migration could have occurred over time. But what's interesting and striking here is that when we tested our proportional hazards models for any time varying effects, this result was sustained over time. So we consider that these results are robust, and that the herds that were most directly affected had the same benefit over time. So
I think just to add to that, when we started the programme, the TB levels in Monaghan were 5 times the national average, and now they're below the national average. So what was going on here in Paul's study area was actually not inconsistent with what was going on in the rest of Monaghan, and this actually led the downward trend.